In the final chaotic months of World War II, the Allies faced this one giant, unconquerable obstacle: the Rhine River. Seriously, military planners were bracing for a bloodbath, a month-long battle just to get across. But what if I told you that the entire defensive plan for Germany, a strategy hundreds of years in the making, didn't just crack, it completely shattered in a few hours? And not because of some massive D-Day-style invasion, but because of one single solitary bridge. A bridge that, by every shred of logic, should have been at the bottom of the river. You see, this isn't just a war story. This is a blueprint for how a single moment, a mix of pure chance, raw courage, and absolutely catastrophic failure, can change the world.
I know what you're thinking. It sounds impossible, right? How can one piece of steel and stone, just 300 meters long, actually bring a global conflict to an early end? Well, the answer isn't really in the concrete or the steel barters. No, the answer is in the minds of the men on both sides of that river. It's a story of psychology and of a deeply flawed system that was designed to fail at the worst possible moment.
Now listen to this quote. Really let it sink in. This isn't from some triumphant Allied general patting himself on the back after a victory. This is from a German major general, the chief of staff no less. This isn't propaganda. It's a confession. It's basically an autopsy report on the Third Reich, written by one of its own doctors. For the German High Command, the second they heard the Ludendorff Bridge at Remagen had been taken, it was over. They knew it. So the question is, why? Let's find out.
Okay, so to really get why this one bridge was such a game changer, you have to understand what the Rhine River represented in March of 1945. This was not just a river. This was the last Great Wall. It was the final defensive line for an empire that was already crumbling to dust. For Hitler, the Rhine was absolutely everything. It was a barrier that could buy him time. Time for his so-called secret weapons, time for a political miracle, time to sue for some kind of peace. The Rhine had to hold.
I want you to picture it not as a river, but as a giant, angry moat built by nature itself. This thing has been Germany's shield against the West since Julius Caesar and the Roman legion stared across it. The currents are treacherous, fast enough to flip assault boats like toys. The banks are steep, a perfect trap for infantry. The whole Allied plan was for a massive, bloody, amphibious assault, basically D-Day all over again. The idea that they could just drive their tanks across on a standing bridge? That was completely, utterly unthinkable.
So how does a fortress get left with the front gate wide open? Well, it all starts at the very top, with one of the most self-defeating orders in military history. See, a few weeks earlier, a bridge in Cologne was destroyed prematurely. Hitler didn't see it as an accident of war. He saw it as treason. So in a fit of rage and paranoia, he issues this insane order. All demolition charges had to be removed from all the Rhine bridges. They could only be put back when the enemy was right on top of you, within 8 kilometers. And even then, you couldn't blow the bridge without a written order from on high. So just imagine you're the German officer in charge. Blow it too early, you get court-martialed for destroying state property. Wait for the order, and the Americans grab it, you get shot for treason. You're damned if you do, and you're executed if you don't. It was a psychological trap that guaranteed paralysis.
And that brings us to the day itself, March 7th, 1945. For the American soldiers of the 9th Armored Division, it started as just another day of pushing forward. They had absolutely no idea they were about to stumble into one of the most dramatic moments of the entire war. This wasn't some grand, planned operation. This was pure, spontaneous, breathtaking audacity.
So let's just walk through this afternoon because it plays out like a Hollywood thriller. At 1 o'clock, American scouts reach a hilltop, look down towards the river, and they cannot believe their eyes. The Ludendorff Bridge is still standing. By 2:45, the word gets to Brigadier General Hoge, and he makes a snap decision that changes history. He says, "We're taking that bridge now. No hesitation." At 3:20, the Germans on the bridge manage to set off a small charge, blowing a crater in the ramp, but the main structure is untouched. 20 minutes later, Lieutenant Timberman and his men are charging onto the bridge, machine gun fire kicking up sparks all around them. Then, at 4 o'clock, the moment of truth, German engineers finally get the order. They turn the key for the main electrical detonator. And? Click. Silence. Nothing happens. A wire had been cut. Desperate, they light a backup fuse at 4:15. A huge explosion rocks the bridge. It literally lifts off its foundations. But when the smoke clears, it's still there. The race was over. They had won.
And when Sergeant Alex Drabeck ran onto that eastern bank, he wasn't just finishing a sprint across a bridge. Think about this for a second. He was the first enemy soldier to cross the Rhine River under arms in over 100 years, not since the age of Napoleon.
In that one moment, he symbolically shattered Germany's most sacred defensive line. It was an absolutely immense breakthrough.
Okay, so they have the bridge. A huge tactical win, for sure. But the real story, the reason we're talking about this today, is the strategic chain reaction it set off. This wasn't just a crack in the wall. This was a shockwave that blew the entire German war effort apart, from the soldiers on the front line all the way back to Hitler's bunker. This is the blueprint of a total collapse.
You can just feel the sheer joy and disbelief in this quote, can't you? This is General Omar Bradley, one of the absolute top American commanders. Hot dog, Courtney! It's so wonderfully American. It's not some stuffy, formal military cable. It's the pure, unfiltered excitement of a leader who understands in his gut that the entire game has just been flipped on its head. He knew, in that instant, that this was the break they had been dreaming of.
And this is how the dominoes fell. First, Hitler's entire strategy of holding the Rhine, gone, obsolete in an afternoon. Second, the Allies pivoted with unbelievable speed. General Eisenhower basically threw his old plans in the trash and started rerouting every available unit south to pour across this one bridge. Third, the Allied timetable for ending the war jumped forward by weeks, maybe even months. And finally, the psychological blow was devastating. For the German army and the people back home, if the legendary, unconquerable Rhine could be crossed this easily, what hope was possibly left? And the Allies didn't waste a second. Look at this number, 8,000 troops. That's not a small raiding party. That's a serious fighting force, with tanks, artillery, the whole shebang. And they were across and digging in on the other side within 24 hours. The Americans weren't just knocking on the door to Germany anymore. They had kicked it off its hinges and were setting up shop in the living room. It was becoming irreversible.
Now, this for me is the most fascinating part of the entire story. What happens next? Because the way the two armies reacted to the exact same event tells you everything you need to know about why one side was winning and the other was doomed. It's a tale of two completely different cultures, two totally opposite philosophies of leadership. Just look at this contrast. It's night and day. On the American side, the thinking is all forward-looking, flexible, opportunistic. We got a bridge? Amazing. Change the plan, get everyone there, now, and give those guys who did it a medal. The entire system is designed to reward initiative and exploit success. Now look at the German side. Their reaction is rigid, paranoid, and backward-looking. The first question isn't, how do we counterattack and fix this? No, the first question is, whose fault is this? Find someone to blame, convene a court-martial, execute them. It's a system that literally eats its own. And if you want to see the tragic human cost of those two systems, look no further. Let's put some names to this. Major Scheller, the German commander. He literally arrived on the scene 2 hours before the Americans attacked. He did everything he could. His fate? Executed. Lieutenant Peters, who defended the bridge? Executed. Now look at their American counterparts. Lieutenant Timmerman, Sergeant Drabeck. They're decorated as heroes, and rightly so. You have two sets of soldiers showing incredible bravery in the same chaotic battle. The only thing that separates their fates is the philosophy of the system they served. This one sentence just says it all, doesn't it? As the Americans are sending thousands of tanks and soldiers across the river to win the war, Hitler's primary response is to send a flying court-martial, basically a traveling execution squad, to hunt down his own officers. He was more obsessed with punishing his own people for failure than he was with actually fighting the enemy. It's the ultimate sign of a regime that is rotting from the inside out. So let's talk about the final payoff. What was the ultimate impact of this one crazy lucky day? The tactical victory was obvious, but the long-term consequences, the lasting echoes of what happened at Remagen, are what really cemented its place in history. This is about so much more than just crossing a river. It's about the lives and the time that were saved. The numbers are just staggering. First, 25,000 Allied troops poured across that one bridge before it finally collapsed. But this next number, this is the one that really gets me. It's estimated that by avoiding that massive planned assault on the Rhine, the Allies saved up to 35,000 casualties. That's an entire sports stadium full of sons and husbands and fathers who got to go home. And the biggest number of all? Some historians say it shortened the war in Europe by as much as 6 months. 6 months! Think of what that means. The death camps were still operating. Cities were still being bombed every night. 6 months is an eternity. And this bridge may have saved it. And here's the final poetic twist. After surviving German demolition charges, dive bombers, V-2 rockets, even commandos,
The bridge itself couldn't hold on. Weakened by the explosions and the constant strain, 10 days after it was captured, it just gave up and collapsed into the river. But in a way, it's like it knew its job was done. By then, the Allies had already built new bridges all around it. The bridgehead was secure, the Ludendorff Bridge held on just long enough to change the world, and then it let go.
So when you boil it all down, the story of Remagen is this powerful lesson in chance and choice. It was pure chance that the bridge was there, that a wire was cut, that the fog lifted at the right time. But it was a deliberate choice by American leaders to take that chance, to throw out the rulebook and seize the moment. And it was the inevitable consequence of a German system built on fear that couldn't possibly adapt. And I love this final part. Today, the great stone towers of the bridge still stand. One side is a peace museum. The other is a space for the arts. A perfect legacy, don't you think?
And that brings this whole story right back to us, here and now, because this is so much more than a history lesson. It's a question. What's the Remagen Bridge in your own world, in your work, your projects, maybe even your life? What's that single point of failure that you think is solid but could bring everything crashing down? Or, maybe more importantly, what's that unexpected opportunity that just appeared out of nowhere, that bridge you didn't plan for? Are you going to wait for written orders? Or are you going to take the bridge?